What if you could descend nearly 4 kilometers beneath the Atlantic Ocean in a high-pressure submersible and then pilot an ROV through the haunting remains of the Titanic, all without leaving your living room? Today, I'm doing exactly that in VR on the Meta Quest 3S. Welcome to the show GV Tech. I'm G Vader. Let's dive in. Before we begin, I would just like to acknowledge that the Titanic isn't just one of the most famous shipwrecks in history. It's also the resting place of 1,500 people who tragically lost their lives in one of the most disastrous maritime events and disasters in recent human history for the last 120 years. So this video isn't about sensationalizing that event or the tragedy. It's about exploring a little bit of history through VR. With that in mind, let's begin our descent into the ocean floor.
But by the 2nd of April 1912, Titanic was completed and taken out to the Irish Sea for her trials. She was certified as seaworthy by the British Board of Trade and ready for her maiden voyage. She would be servicing the transatlantic route, a journey from Southampton, England to New York, USA, with stops at Cherbourg, France and Queenstown, Ireland. E, F and G, which housed the third-class open space and cabins for third-class single men and crew. Third-class single women and families were accommodated in the stern. The D-deck open space was a large sheltered area with bench seats, small tables and a bar. Steerage passengers used this space to walk, socialise and to listen to music. They were expected to create their own entertainment and some passengers brought their instruments with them on the journey. The third-class passengers held a dance party here on the night of the sinking. The crew staying in this section were mostly firemen, trimmers and greasers. These crewmen worked in the hot and dirty boiler and engine rooms, shoveling coal and greasing machinery. There were 2 purser's offices on board, one for first class and one for second class. The offices were run by 6 pursers who handled passenger inquiries, cash and valuables in the safe and issued tickets to the Turkish baths and swimming pool on F deck. First and second class passengers needed to register their arrival at their respective purser's office and they were given maps of the ship. This office was also the first point of call if first class passengers wished to send telegraph messages using the new wireless technology on board. Chief Purser Hugh McElroy was well known among the first-class passengers and crew, having served on White Star liners for 13 years. He often dined alongside passengers in the restaurant. During the cross-channel journey, McElroy kept a canary in his cabin, minding it during its delivery to a friend in Cherbourg. On the night of the accident, he was seen assisting with loading and lowering Lifeboat 9. He helped women enter the boat and spoke with owner Bruce Ismay. He was also seen on deck speaking with Assistant Purser Reginald Barker and surgeons William O'Loughlin and John Simpson. The friends were standing silently watching the last boats being lowered and spoke briefly with Officer Lightoller before shaking hands and saying their goodbyes. The sitting room, one of the most recognisable on board Titanic, was part of a parlour suite occupied by the Strauses. It was decorated in the Regency style with mahogany furniture and gilt panels. It was the only room on board in this style, and you can still see the golden clock sitting on the mantelpiece, surrounded by debris. The bedroom next door also contained mahogany furniture. When the time came for Ida to board Lifeboat 8, she entered the lifeboat but then realised her husband would have to stay on board. She stepped back out. Isidore and others tried to convince her to re-enter the boat, but she refused to leave without her husband. Ida helped their maid Ellen Bird into the boat and wrapped her fur coat around Ellen, saying she wouldn't be needing it anymore. Isidore and Ida were last seen sitting in deck chairs on the A-deck promenade holding hands. Isidore's body was recovered from the ocean, but Ida's was never found. The Straus's parlour suite was just one of many specially designed first-class rooms, larger on Olympic and extended out into the reception area. During Olympic's maiden voyage, White Star officials noticed crowding in the reception area each night after dinner and decided to extend the reception area on Titanic. They also redesigned the small reception area near the B-Deck restaurant to split the crowd and added additional seating in both areas. They were exact copies of those found on Olympic. It wasn't until film director James Cameron explored this area with an ROV that it was discovered the intricate design of their grills is different to that on Olympic. Not a lot of sea life lives at this depth, but since discovering the wreck we've learned quite a bit about the ones that do. So far, 24 species of invertebrates have been discovered around the wreck, including crabs, coral and sea stars. There have also been 4 species of fish found, with the rat-tail or grenadier fish being one of the more common species. They can grow up to 1 metre long and can be found both inside and outside the wreck. E-Deck was also known as the upper deck and provided accommodation for first, second and third class passengers as well as most of the crew. An access corridor used by both crew and steerage ran almost the length of the ship on the port side, just behind this door. Named Scotland Road by the crew after the busy street in Liverpool, the 2.6 metre wide corridor allowed passengers to make their way to and from the dining saloons on F-Deck, where they would sit or lay in the heat for 10 to 15 minutes. Here they would start to sweat before moving into the adjoining hot room. After spending another 5 to 10 minutes in the hot room, the passenger would either take a cold shower or a dip in the swimming bath next door, before making their way into the shampooing room. Here the passenger would lay on a marble table while an attendant gave them a full body wash and massage. Once dry and wrapped in clean towels, the passenger would make their way back to the cooling room where they would relax until their body returned to the normal temperature. The Turkish baths is one of the best preserved areas on the ship, with most of the tiles, ceiling lanterns and wooden panelling still in place. The deep location within the wreck leaves it protected from destructive currents, although there is still sea life down here. The rust icicles, or rusticles, hanging from the ceiling are created by iron-eating bacteria. They come in different shapes and are incredibly fragile, disintegrating when touched. Along with the bacteria, fungi, shells, sand, clay and coal can be found within the rusticles. Scientists have been collecting samples to determine the different strains of bacteria living on the ship, and their research has been used to preserve oil and gas pipelines and safely dispose of old ships and oil rigs. This stateroom was occupied by Margaret Brown, a wealthy American activist and philanthropist. She was heavily involved in workers' and women's rights and campaigned to support those less fortunate both before and after the accident. Margaret was holidaying in Egypt with friends when she received a message that her eldest grandson was seriously sick at home in the United States. She booked the earliest ship from Cherbourg back to New York, the RMS Titanic. In her interview with Colonel Archibald Gracie, she stated she was lying on her brass bed reading at the time of the accident. She felt the bump, but didn't think much of it and kept reading. It wasn't until she heard men talking about heading up on deck that she decided to find out what happened. One of the men told her to grab her lifebelt and head up onto the boat deck with them.
All of this is quite overwhelming. Thanks for staying to watch this far. Don't forget to like, share and subscribe. Until next time, be good.